All right, let's move into this week's lesson. Give me a second. Let me open it up. And we'll have you guys here. All right. Can I get another thumbs up as soon as you guys see the screen? Yes. Perfect, perfect. All right. Let me just close up some of my tabs and we'll get started right away. Perfect.
Have you ever watched Oversimplified?
Yes.
Yeah, I also watched about this, but it wasn't very accurate. I mean, like, it is oversimplified.
Yes, that's the point of Oversimplified. I really like what they do in Oversimplified. However, a lot of the things they have to gloss over because you have to remember they have a very limited amount of time to teach somebody something, and usually what they teach has to be very simple because it's usually for people that have no experience or no background. So for something like our class, I also go very simple, but I try to dig just a bit deeper with some more interesting facts.
Are we gonna watch Oversimplified?
No, we are not, because I believe that things like that, like Oversimplify, you can watch on your own times, right? Because that is just open to everybody to watch. All right.
When we watch, you said we would watch the emote. What was it called again?
Sorry, the what?
The Emu War, right?
Yeah,
yes, we did.
You didn't watch it, actually.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. You can go back to our YouTube channel and you'll see a video there of us watching it. All right.
Can we watch it again?
No, because today we're going to be talking about the history of China. And this is part 1 of a pretty long series. And we're going to talk about the first 2,000 years of Chinese history. All right?
Blur.
Perfect. All right. Great. So the first dynasties of China. That is where we're going to start.
About this a long time before.
Yes, we did. So we're going to revisit it and let's add some more information to kind
Dynasties
of build up what
basically
you know.
means like kingdoms and stuff.
Yes, great. Okay, I see Brendan, very perceptive, okay? Already seeing that I have a question post on the slideshow of what is a dynasty? And sorry, could you repeat your question? Sorry, your answer.
Basically, a dynasty is like something about like kingdoms and other kingdoms. And
so yes, dynasty is another word for kingdom. That is absolutely correct. But specifically, it is a sequence of rulers. So it's just a bunch of rulers that have the same part of the same house or family. So usually they are related, and dynasty is preserved throughout one family. And usually a dynasty is the rule of one single family. It could be a family, it could be a clan, it could be a house, depending on where you are. So for China, that like dynasties were based on families. All right, great. So we got that question answered. So let's talk about the first dynasties of China. We did talk about this last summer. However, let's revisit it and dig a bit deeper. So does anybody remember the main history the main story behind the first dynasty of China? I'll remind everybody. The first dynasty of dynasty.
This is my third time, so I do not know.
Yes, that's fine. But so let's remind everybody the first dynasty is called the Xia dynasty.
And then came the Han
dynasty. Something with the water?
Yes, Ying. Great. It is something to do with the water.
He dug something up in the land to make the water flow through it.
Yes, so that is absolutely correct. So the main story and behind the emperor of the Xia dynasty was the Great Yu, or the Yu Empire, and how the Great Yu controlled The water.
The water.
That's absolutely correct. Or in Chinese, 大禹治水. And what the Chinese tale / legend was saying is how great Yu, the emperor, was able to control the water or channel the water using more modernized techniques, such as digging channels, building dams, and kind of what they back then, because of this techniques, thought that he was appointed by the god to be able to control the water, to push the water in a certain way. But with our current knowledge, with us knowing how to build dams, how to create special rivers, we now know what he did was just engineering, be able to kind of change the route of the water by kind of guiding it the other way. Yeah, great job, Yilin. Yes, that's absolutely correct. This is the main story of the First Dynasty of China. However, there's one thing that most people don't talk about of the First Dynasty, is that this actually might not even be the First Dynasty.
This might not be true.
Yes, exactly. It might not be true. And the reason for that is that there's no contemporary sources or current sources. So this is a new word just for current sources to point out that the Xia period actually existed. So there's no documented things outside of the alleged writings of the dynasty. There is no writing about how the Xia dynasty existed and how it kind of fell out of power. All of it is all myths and legends. So I think that is very interesting that a lot of Chinese people still take this as concrete history and counting it as, if you see before, the over 5,000 years of history that we see. That is something that a lot of Chinese people like to say, the up and down of 5,000 years, 上下五千年, right? So yeah, so the First Dynasty is under a lot of scrutiny or a lot of debates about whether it really happened. So, but that is for historians. But as I said, for Chinese people, most people believe in this First Dynasty, saying that their ancestors originated around the east coast of China, around the Yellow River, and around Beijing. And can anybody tell me why it is very important for people to originate from rivers? What does that have to do with? I remember talking about this last time. Don't know if anybody remember. Sorry?
Luck.
Oh, okay. That's one guess. Luck. Is it luck that they have to be beside a river? Anybody else has a guess?
Fertilized soil?
Okay, fertile land. Great. All right. Do we have another guess before I reveal the answer? Nope.
Great Yu.
Oh, no, sorry. This has nothing to do with it. So I'm just asking, why do people, like First Dynasties, so like any empire or any dynasty that first pop up are usually beside rivers or beside the soil. Basically, in this case, the Yellow River.
Get water.
Culture.
Perfect. That's our third guess. And I can say these two are absolutely correct. Unfortunately, Brendan, I don't think there's much to do with luck based on the positioning of these dynasties. So the reason why these early dynasties relied on being beside water is because of food. Back then, there was no way to really control the water and get a lot of fertilizer, because current days we have manufactured fertilizers where we use a lot of cow dung, pig dung, a lot of these what we call bio waste, and we create fertilizer where we can grow crops from. However, back then they didn't have that, so they had to rely on the river to bring up something called silt. Silt was this very, very rich type of dirt that was able to help them grow plants and crops very fast. And this meant that by able to have a lot of crops, they're allowed to maintain a large population. And with a larger population comes bigger dynasties. Bigger dynasties means more stronger dynasties. And then they pop onto like the world map as an empire. So that's why fertile land beside river is very important, because it leads to really great agriculture, which is all due to silt. And all of this leads to being able to create a dynasty or an empire.
I've touched soaked before. It's soft.
Yes, it's very soft. It's kind of a
Moist?
bit. It's more. Yeah, of course, it's moist because it's usually in water, and it has this kind of spongy texture because it's a mix of mud and a lot of minerals.
That's the cool.
It's also gray.
Yes, that's correct. It doesn't always have to be gray, but yes, pure silt is gray, but usually it's much darker with like brown or black because it's like mixed in with a lot of mud. All right. Any questions about this?
Nope. I don't think so.
Perfect. If there's no questions, let's move on. So we talked about the First Dynasty, and at this time we throughout Chinese history, we all called these different empires dynasties. As we talked about, a dynasty is just a chain of ruling through one single family. But there are two different types of dynasties. So the one type of dynasties we're talking about right now are the ancient dynasties. So we talked about the first ancient dynasty, the Xia dynasty, controlled by Great Yu. Let's move on to the second ancient dynasty, the Shang
Han?
dynasty.
Down.
The Shang dynasty. All right. So this is the second ancient dynasty of China, and the Shang dynasty existed from 1600 BC to 1046 BC.
And it was real.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. This has proof. So this is technically the first dynasty where we have actual physical proof of it existing. Before this period, as we said with the Xia dynasty, there wasn't really true proof that any of that really existed. This dynasty is the only proof that we have of the first ever case of really having Chinese people or people living in and around the Yellow River or the Hangzhe River. All right, so again, there's proof, and the proof is with written records. So we have what are called oracle bone scripts. And we can see that on this side. Sorry, much further over. Let's drag that over. Things like that. That is what's called an oracle bone script. Usually it is scripts that are written on bone. So they're carved in, and you can see there's these little different characters that is a written language that the Shang dynasty actually had.
How did they get the bone?
That's a great question. Usually it's from killing a lot of really big animals. So you have to remember at the start, there was mammoths, then probably elephants when it get hotter, and they would try to get bone whenever they can to write things in. One of the largest things that it's not Chinese based, but one of the most common bones for ancient cultures to write on is actually a tortoise shell, because tortoises can live to up to 100 years old. So their shell is very durable, and their shells are insanely big, so you can write a lot of things on it. All right, yeah. So we actually have thousands of these samples of writing. However, a lot of these characters from the Shang dynasty has never been deciphered. So we don't even know how to read that bone plate or that bone script. Archaeologists and linguists, so people that study ancient artifacts and people that study language, are trying to use computers to help us decipher the meanings of these languages and these writings. So think of it as an AI trying to go through and comb through every one of these and try to find what that means. It's the same thing as how they try to decipher ancient Greek through Latin. Have you guys heard of the Rosetta Stone? Yes, it's a stone that Napoleon actually found that had 3 different pieces of writing with the exact same meaning, but with 3 different languages. Yes, and with this piece of basically this stone, they're able to decipher 2 ancient languages that were never able to decipher before. All right, so as we said, they're the first dynasty to have a written record. So the one most important development that the the Shang Dynasty brought to China was writing, specifically what we call a pictograph system. A pictograph writing system.
I don't get how the word moon in Chinese looks like the moon. I don't get it at all.
Great question. Let's start with how it kind of changed, right? So the left part is kind of the furthest back in history, and the right part is the current understanding of the words. So we see from the moon, we kind of slowly develop over time. So we start off like a very moon-like shape, then we start adding a squiggly instead of a dot, and then we kind of turn the moon on its side, and we kind of added more slices in through it. And through modernization and making things more universal, we made it more boxy instead of this roundy shape, and that we get the modern character for moon.
I bet that you had to be very artistic with your stuff in China.
Yes.
Because like, look at that bird. I can't even draw a bird like that.
Yeah, so that's why things started getting easier and easier and easier, and actually gets easier with the current writing of bird being like that. So they got rid of the middle line and exchanged it for a dot, and these 3 little dots over here is now exchanged for a line. So we have traditional Chinese and we have the simplified. So we see that things get easier to write and it gets more standardized instead of looking more like a graph or a picture.
I mean, like, you
Just
would have to
like
be very artistic
Horse
in
is
writing.
also like this bird.
Sorry, Yulin?
The horse also has that thing and a line.
Yes, that's correct, because all of the things that kind of move all had this shape to it. So that's why a lot of animals still kind of retain a certain type of writing style. Yeah. Great find, Yilin. All right. So one last thing about the Shang writings was very, very interesting, because the one reason that they were able to confirm, or they're trying to confirm that the Xia dynasty is actually right, is through writings of a person called Sima Qian, which we're going to learn later on. And the importance of this guy was that the writing that he wrote basically 2,000 years later matches up with the writing that we find in the Shang dynasty. So the first-hand records that we can depict now, thanks to modern technology and modern archaeologists, are the same from almost 2,000 years later of this guy in ancient time that didn't have any technology wrote about. So that's why we know that the Shang dynasty exists, and that it is truthful, because there's 2 different records. One, the primary documents that we found today, and one that was written by a person 2,000 years later, and those 2 records matched up. That's why we know the Shang dynasty exists and is rightful. And there is no variations, and there is nothing that can contradict this guy's work. So this guy's work is 100%.
Question.
Yes?
Are we going to learn about Western stuff?
No, this is East Asian history class, remember? For the 4 classes.
Oh, but I really wanted to learn about like Britain and like.
If you want to learn more
Right.
about Britain, we had a class on it a few months back, and there's a YouTube video on it that I've made. And if you have any interest on that, you can go watch it. And it splits Britain up into 2 different parts. And yeah, and of course, if you have any questions after watching those videos, you can leave a comment down below the videos, and I'll try to respond to anybody. All right, great. Yeah, that sounded like an advertisement. Hopefully it didn't, but yeah, let's just keep going. So as I said, this Sima Qian person have 100% legit writing based on the records that they were able to confirm in the Shang dynasty. And the Sima Qian person also wrote about the Xia dynasty and the First Dynasty. So based on that, that is why people think the Xia dynasty might have existed, even though there is no actual proof from the First Dynasty itself. It was only written by Sima Qian, but because of his 100% legit writing, they were able to maybe confirm the existence of the Xia dynasty. All right, any questions on that? Nope.
Like,
Great.
but they're using bone for like writing must be so hard because it's like easy to fracture sometimes.
Yes, so that's why you see like we don't have like perfect pieces. All of them are like pieced together. They break
And
really
there's like
easily.
holes in the writing.
But we have to remember back then they didn't need something that's very long term. They never thought of preserving everything, right? They thought, oh, it's useful, it's easy, let's just use it now. All right, so let's keep moving. The next place we're going to go to is the last ancient Chinese dynasty, which is the Zhou.
So
Yes, the Zhou dynasty.
it's
as
the
Eden-
longest dynasty.
Yes, that is true. It was one of the longest dynasties, but there is some caveats on that. You know, we're going to talk about why it might not have been the longest one, and why the next dynasty after the Han dynasty might have been the longest one. But we're going to cover that later on. So the Zhou dynasty was named after the first emperor of the dynasty, Zhou Wenwang. So you can see that his last name was taken to be the name of the dynasty. Very ostentatious. But of course, when you're the emperor, you do anything you want. So the Zhou dynasty lasted from 1045 BC to 2221 BC. So again, BC is before Christ, or some people even say BCE, before the Common Era. Perfect. Yes. So technically, it is the longest dynasty in the world. However, Zhou had basically lost all of its power in the 770 BC.
When all the dynasties like started to form their own nations.
Yes, that's correct. So they basically lost all of its power by 770 BC, and a lot of things started collapsing and splitting apart. One of the major parts of this was philosophy and religion. Actually, that came out of this.
Sophie?
Was there Christianity?
No, Christianity Christianity is a Western idea. You have to remember Catholicism, so Catholics, Judaism, Jewish, and Christianity, Christians are all Western, so European ideas. Christianity was not introduced to China around the late 1800s. And maybe even later, because until they were able to have trading ships and have ships reaching China to open trade, especially in Hong Kong, Christianity didn't really exist. But that's why you see such prevalence of Christianity and Christians in Hong Kong. So a lot of the Cantonese people that you'll meet will be Christians, which is a very interesting idea because they were very influenced by Britain, which was also very Christian. So when these British people went to Hong Kong, they also influenced the local Hong Kong people to be Christians. All right. So as I was saying, the last ancient dynasty had the contribution of philosophy and religion. So those two things kind of go hand in hand, philosophy being the ideas and kind of certain ways that you should act, religion being the same thing, but based on a deity or some supernatural thing. The two most important ideas of philosophy that came out of this was Confucianism.
I'm guessing that it means like very like being confused.
No, that is not why it is called that.
Is it something about law?
So that is something else. That was called legalism, which will be introduced a bit later in history, and it's not as important. But legalism and Confucianism kind of merge together for this neo-Confucianism or this new Confucianism, which kind of takes over. But the original Confucianism is not based on law, but based on kind of virtues, some things that I have to live upon as a person, some things that I have to do, and some things I can't do as a human being. All right, so that is Confucianism. So these two different philosophies are named after two different people. So that's where it comes from. Not because you're confused or if you're Tao. I don't know even what that means. All right. Oops.
There's a
can try
really
to use
weird
this
law
way.
in somewhere where you cannot fart for some reason.
Yeah,
Oops.
there is probably a law about that, about farting in public somewhere. I'm guessing either Singapore or Japan, like very conservative parts.
It's so weird.
It's weird, but of course it's like culture, right? Yeah, so it's something that you have to adapt to when you go visit some certain places. You have to respect their culture. It's like most people think Chinese culture is pretty weird too, right? Like taking your shoes. I wouldn't say this is a real culture, but most of you guys have to take off your shoes when you arrive home. But for a lot of Americans, that is very, very weird because they keep their shoes on at home.
But do they even keep it on when they're sleeping?
No, they only take it off when they go to sleep, but they wear it around in their house. So like that's weird for us, right? But again, that is just a culture that different places would adapt to. I can get more into that if you guys want, but yeah. There is a historical reason of why some people take off their shoes and some people don't.
Why?
It's based on how their houses are developed. In Western, we have the European types of housing, which is stone. The Victorian era housing is stone, so it's very cold. Usually, and their shoes are made much more comfortable, so they usually would wear their shoes everywhere in the house, and they usually have more servants that do all of the cleaning for them, so that's why. However, for China, the places are sometimes much more hotter, so like shoes were basically sandals, and basically sandals became slippers, and that's why modern day shoes, which is actually a Western invention, it is not worn in houses. Rather, we wear like slippers, right? Because that is what the Chinese people would have wore around their houses in ancient times. All right, so yeah, great. Let's get to the last part of the Zhou dynasty. As Yilin said, it was one of the longest dynasties of China because it technically gets split into 3 different periods.
I think you guys forgot to write China, not Chen.
Yes, that is I apologize for that.
Ooh.
Western.
Well,
Yes,
it's
and we have-
totally legit China, not Chen. Right?
Yes,
Spring, autumn period.
and we have the competing kingdoms.
What?
One of them had that really powerful warlord that I forgot the name of.
I do not
You
think
could
that
be-
was part of this. So if you guys, yeah, so I know you guys might be thinking of the Warring Kingdoms. Basically the book about the romance of the kingdoms. It's not based on this. This is something different. There was around 6 to 7 different kingdoms competing during this dynasty's time.
Why are
Alright.
there holes inside inside like why are there gaps?
Good question. So these are usually either very big lakes or they're owned by barbarians or places that they cannot conquer. So there might be like a lot of separatists that were trying to fight, and these are the places that they fought out of.
Who knew that barbarians could invade?
Well, you have to remember the most powerful army in the ancient times was Mongolian, and the Mongolians were technically barbarians.
Oh, I get it now.
So yeah, all right. So we got to remember that basically, as we I forgot to give you guys the time periods. This is why I said that really the Zhou dynasty wasn't the longest dynasty, because the only technically Zhou part of the dynasty only lasted for 300 years. And we have the spring autumn period where the whole country was split into half for around another 300 years, and then we have another 200 years into the warring state periods, where we have kind of the competing kingdoms all fighting for power. All right. Great. Okay, any questions about the Zhou dynasty? All right. Yeah, the splitting of the Zhou dynasties.
I wonder how lakes could be that big.
So yes, so I believe there's the 7 Great Lakes. Correct. I am not sure. Don't quote me on that. There's a few like great water, like freshwater lakes in the world, and one of them is in China. Fun fact: 3 to 4 of them are in North America, which means that we have a lot of fresh water in North America. Yes, I see. Who had a question? Was it Yilin?
Is the red part how big China is?
Yes, so this was Zhou dynasty. The red part was what Zhou dynasty owned. Everything else were barbarians, tribes, and other places that they couldn't conquer.
So right now, China's way bigger.
Yes, so do you see this black line over here?
Yeah.
This
That's
is
like-
current China.
And then the small red things are like the like before China.
Yes, so this is the red one is the Zhou dynasty, which is around 3,000 years ago.
I remember China looked like a chicken.
Yes, that is correct. It is. It looks like a chicken on the map.
For me, it looks like a gun.
Now, it's really up to people's description of it and how you really see it, right? It's like looking up in the clouds, seeing a dog or seeing a cat. Right? It's really up to from person to person. All right. So with that, let's keep going.
Why does it say shui for confusion?
Confucianism. Yes, we.
Conf-
Okay, we'll talk about that later. And Harvey, can I ask you to not draw on the screen, or I have to stop everybody from drawing?
I like the Tosium symbol better.
Like it's
Yeah.
like yin yang, so it makes
so
sense.
It's the Taoism. Great. So let's talk about the 2 parts. Let's start off with Confucianism. Confucianism was founded by Confucius. Big surprise. His name is literally
Question.
part of
I am
this.
so confused by this.
Yes, Harvey?
Shouldn't Taoism be like the white and black? Why is it white and blue?
It's just a different color. Yes, it's supposed to be white and black, but this is just a picture. All right, it's not exactly there. Yes, Yulin?
Is a confuser that word? Is that shui?
Yes, that is water. Exactly why I do not know, but from what I can kind of extract and what I can basically guess is that they used the water shui because it is nature. Confucius was very big on obeying nature, being able to bend and not break nature, and basically flow with nature and make sure you do not upset the nature. And water is a very good representation of that. It keeps flowing and it pushes the path, but it never breaks anything from the path. That is kind of what Confucianism was very about. So Confucius in Chinese is called 孔夫子, right? And yes, or most people know him as 孔子, right? So 子 is just kind of Mr. So it's like saying Mr. Kong. Same thing. It was just kind of a respectful way to say his name. So Confucius created this branch of philosophy called Confucianism that was very focused on 5 parts of life. First was benevolence. righteousness, politeness, wisdom, and trust. Those are the 5 pillars of Confucianism. So benevolence is being always good to the person and never try to take revenge on the person. Righteousness is always about doing the right thing. Don't try to, cheat people. Don't try to, do bad things. Politeness is, well, of course, being polite. Always treat
Or
each other
nice.
with respect. Yes, or being nice. Wisdom is always
Wise.
being wise, yes, and trying to learn as much knowledge as you can. Trust is, of course, being trustful. Don't think the world is always against you, and be trustful of people that are trying to help you. That's kind of the 5 pillars of Confucianism. You can see it's all about peace, right? It's not war. It's not no battles, right? Everything is peaceful. Taoism, on the other hand, is all about balance. That's why you have the yin yang symbol, the dark and the light, right? The death and life. So Taoism believes that the humans and animals should live in balance, or in balance with the universe. They actually believe in something called spiritual immortality. Where basically the spirit of the body can join the universe after death, just like a lot of religion believes in life after death. Basically, the yin and the yang. All right.
That's weird. People believe in tons of crazy and absurd stuff.
Yeah. Great. All right. Any questions on Confucianism versus Taoism?
Well, I'm very confused about
Yes.
Confucianism.
Good one. So yes, Confucianism is very deep. So philosophy is something that takes basically your whole life to understand. So if you guys don't understand it now, maybe if you're interested, you can keep looking through what Confucianism and Taoism is. But for now, let's keep moving. Let's go into the first imperial dynasty of China. So we talked about the ancient dynasties of the Xia, the Shang, and the Zhou, but let's move into the first imperial, basically the empire of China, which is
That's
the
what the
Qin
statues.
dynasty.
If you
Yes,
stay
those-
there for too long, you can go crazy and be mad.
That is false. That is basic. That is something people made up. But yes, Yilin, you have a question?
Are those the clay statues in front of the king's tomb or burial thing?
Yes. So this is terracotta army.
How did people even carve those things? That's
Well,
sick.
back then you have to remember they had thousands of people, thousands of slaves just going at it non-stop, because he's the emperor, and he wanted his burial to be as grand as possible, right? So yeah.
Wow.
So let's talk about the Qin dynasty. Let's start from the top. So the Qin dynasty was one of the shortest lived dynasties of the world, but also the most influential. It lasted less than 15 years. Funny enough, that is basically that is younger than I am. And however, they were one of the most influential, and they changed the most about China. Some bad, some good. The society was actually very centralized. So this is a good, right? Because a centralized government meant there was a strong government to stop people from attacking and make the society very stable. However, a lot of people were killed, tortured, or became slaves if they talked against the emperor. So if they even said anything bad, or where they had some criticism about the empire, they got killed, they got tortured, or they became slaves. And
becoming slave option is better than any of the other ones.
yes, but I don't think you had a choice. Most of the slaves ended up building projects. So you guys probably know these slaves ended up building either these terracotta armies or what we'll talk later, the Great Wall. So the Qin Empire was also known for its far-reaching policies. It tried to spread as much as possible, and again, because they wanted to conquer all of China, right? So they standardized a lot of things, because to control so much land, everything has to be the same, or everything becomes such a big mess. Whenever I just cross like 5 kilometers to change a currency, which becomes very, very annoying. So they started standardizing 3 different things. Basically, the big 3 standardization. Just before I continue, does everybody understand what standardization means?
Like making things standard, like making things same and
Okay,
stuff.
Yilin, you have a question? Sorry, Yilin.
So there was only one person to be the government. There would only be one generation in the whole Qin dynasty, because only 15 years.
Yes, so basically after Qin Shi Huang, or the Qin Shi Huang, or the first emperor of Qin, died, his son tried to take over but was too weak and the dynasty fell. So yeah, so back to the standardization. The 3 standardization really meant being the same. That's correct. Brendan was. So everything had to be the same to be able to have everything easier, right? So the 3 things that were the same was the writing system, the writing, the money, and measurements.
Or currency.
Yes. So we have the writing. So they standardized everything for Han Chinese. This is the first time. Money, everybody had to use the same central currency. So all money is now governed by the central bank or the central government. Measurements, measuring things. So a feet, or in Chinese, the imperial foot or the imperial inch, was dictated by the emperor himself. So measurements were the same. So building projects were easier to control.
It's like America vs Canada in measurements.
Yes. So basically, well, no, but America is this weird case we don't care about. But most people in the world use, well, the standardized, the System International, or the SI units, which are meters, grams, kilograms, liters, and etc. etc. Those are kind of the standardized units. All right. So let's keep going. So we have the terracotta armies, as people have pointed out over here. And what the terracotta army was this collection of sculptures made from terracotta, which is a type of clay, depicting the army of Qin Shi Huang.
Qin Shi Huang.
Yes, and his army, the first emperor of China.
How
Right?
did they know which positions they should put the statues in?
Well, of course they were. Well, the emperor built this, and of course there were specialization of people putting certain things everywhere. So it wasn't just the army. They also had a lot of different figures, such as warriors. They had chariots, and they had horses, all built from terracotta, right? And the roles actually differed based on how tall they were. The taller they were, the more important they were. So the tallest people were actually the generals of the army. So in the estimates in 2007, there were 3 different pits containing terracotta army, and over 8,000 soldiers, over 100 different chariots with 500 horses. And a lot of these are basically near the tomb of Qin Shi Huang. However, one important thing is that his actual burial site is not actually found. And people don't want to open his burial site up, because, as you can see, these terracotta armies actually lost their color. Before they got opened up and exposed to air, they used to be beautiful. They were all painted, hand painted with different types of colors for the uniforms, for their clothing, and for their face, right? However, because they were exposed to air, all of it disappeared, which is very unfortunate. So for any of the newly discovered terracotta armies and all of the scans that they did using X-rays to scan the ground for more terracotta armies, they don't want to open it up because they want to preserve the colors in there. All right. Any questions on that? Pick up my pencil.
You should probably look at the time.
Yes, I am looking at the time right now because we started a bit later, waiting for people to join. So yeah.
I have a question.
Yes, Harvey.
Is the Great Wall of China effective?
Yes, it is it's pretty effective. So what it does, as Harvey said, the effectiveness was to do border control. So as people try to pass over, because you have to remember back then, there wasn't planes. The only way people got across was through boats or through cars, right? Or chariots, because cars weren't really a thing. So what the Great Wall does was basically wall a whole section of China off, very, very long section, thousands of kilometers, right? And basically it stops people from crossing into China. And mainly it's to keep the Mongolians out.
We learned the wonders of the world in Greece or Rome. I forgot.
Yes and no. So yes, that is absolutely correct. There are wonders of the world in Greece and in Rome, and those are the hanging garden of Babylon, of the Babylonian hanging gardens, but that does not exist. We have the garden of sorry, I don't remember. There's like 3 gardens that are in Greek and in Rome. However, the last 2 standing wonders of the world are in China, the Great Wall, and in Egypt, the Great Pyramids of Giza. Those are the 2 last standing wonders of the world.
Did you know that? Oh, wait, I forgot my question. Never mind.
All right. So when we think about the Great Wall, we don't think about the Great Wall of the past time. The Great Wall we see now is actually built in the 1500th century. But the Great Wall actually started in the 600 BC. So it started long time ago. However, it was completed by Qin Shi Huang in 2006 BC. But most of the walls that was built by the Qin Dynasty and earlier all disintegrated, whether through war, through just weather. It just doesn't exist at all anymore. The most known sections of the wall and the sections we can still climb are part of the Ming Dynasty, which we're going to be talking about next week, built around 1580.
Wow.
All right.
It must be so hard to build these.
Yes, that's why they had thousands of slaves building the Great Wall. And that's why something like this isn't possible anymore, because it will take too much money. Back then, they can keep everything very low cost because labor was free through the slaves. So again, we said the effectiveness of the Great Wall was for defense, border controlling, like kind of marking where China stopped and where China started, allowing duties. They actually collected taxes for anybody coming into China. So having this wall was very easy for people to collect taxes on people bringing goods in and out of China along the Silk Road. The Silk Road being this road from basically east going all the way to the west and transporting Eastern goods such as silk and gold or any spices that the Chinese made, like tea, all the way into
also known as
Eastern
the
Europe.
Silk Road.
Yes, the Silk Road. That's absolutely correct. And that's, of course, coming from the name because they traded silk. All right. So to end it off, I'm just going through it quickly. You can see these are the things that we're going to be focusing on next week. We're going to be going through the Han Dynasty, which is the greatest dynasty of China, going through the 3 different Han dynasties that there is. Going through
Dynasty, the greatest dynasty of China.
Han, yes, Han Dynasty is what the greatest.
I mean Han, like
no,
T-A-N-E.
it is not. This is the largest and longest surviving empire in China.
Uh,
Why is there two Great Walls?
Yes, as we said, the Great Walls are actually in pieces, right? Different dynasties built different parts of the Great Wall. And the Qin dynasty kind of created this section where he like created into this one section by combining them all. And the Han dynasty created the second part to reinforce the wall to create more of a barrier. All right. So yeah. So we're going to be talking about the Han dynasty. We're going to be talking about who Sima Qian is and the four greatest books of China: the Book of Han, Book of Latter Han, the records of grand historian, and lastly but not least, the records of the three kingdoms, which has been created into a movie and into a book called The Romance of the Three Kingdoms, or 三国演义. All right.
Game called 三国演义.
Yes, that is correct. So
would you like to know the most strongest empire now? The strongest China empire?
sorry.
It would be the modern day China.
Yes, that is absolutely correct. Yes, of course, because of technological advancements. However, if we just look at China at the same period, Han China was actually the most advanced compared to everybody else. They were the first to have gunpowder, to have guns, to have fireworks, to have working compasses and maps compared to every other country. So back then, at like 0 BC, nobody can rival Han China if they kept expanding.
The Mongols invaded China.
Yeah,
Would they
yes,
lose
but that
or
was
would they
after
win?
Han. Current days or what?
Like when Han existed.
Oh no, no chance. Mongolia wasn't even a thing. They were just, Mongolian back then was actually a puppet to China. They had to bow down to China, and to stop China from invading Mongolia and neighboring countries, they had to give China goods every month, kind of like taxing. So China was very
Taxing, but it's
strong.
much more bigger.
Yes, that's correct. All right, so that is the end of today's next lesson. Next week, we're going to be focusing on more of the modern parts of China, starting off basically at 0 AD, the modern, the common era, and all the way to today, where we have basically the People's Republic of China. All right.
Where there's aircraft, there's advancing technology and stuff.
Yes, that's absolutely correct. So with that being said, that is the end of today's class. Hope you guys enjoyed, and don't forget, next week we're going to have a Kahoot on what we learned this week. And yeah, thank you everybody for coming. I'll see you guys next week. Oh, one more thing.
So
If you guys
you
would
mean
like
a
to
China map in Minecraft? Then can we see it?
Yes, I do have Minecraft maps to show you guys. So if you guys want to stay, you guys can stay for the Minecraft maps. If you guys want to leave, you guys are free to leave. Yes.
Okay. Goodbye. Have a nice
The
week.
Kahoot?
Bye-bye.
Can I help you make the Kahoot?
No, because I would like this to be fair, right? So I want everybody to be able to have the Kahoot. All right. So let me reshare my screen for the Minecraft, and let's get to see what the Minecraft is. All right. I know maybe some of you guys are excited, some of you guys aren't. All right. Give me a second. I'm just opening it right now. Sorry, just give me a second. It's loading right now. All right. See if you can see the screen. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. Optimize for that. All right. So let's look at the two places. First is this. Oh, sorry. Let me just make sure that the right one's open. All right, let's look at the Forbidden City of China, which is loading right now. Bit slow, I may be correct. But yeah, this, can you recognize what this is?
The Great Wall.
Yes, that's correct. So yeah, I love using Minecraft to show people. So this is the Great Wall. We could see that you see these designs. These holes, if you didn't know, were for people to have their heads to peek out, to have like guns and cannons here, so they can shoot at people while still having enough cover, so they can't get shot at. These were actually placed here, and usually there's a fire that will be set here as a signal, because back then they didn't have radio and they didn't have telephone, so how people communicated was through these fires that they could put on different towers. All right, so see, the Great Wall, even on this scale, is very, very, very large. You can see, right? It
How
spans.
would they go onto the square place if there isn't a door?
Oh yeah, sorry, because remember this is Minecraft, so that's why there isn't a door here. But in the real life version, there will be a door here where you can basically hop into, right? And get to the second floor, because this is Minecraft. Nothing is very exact, right? And yeah, so I'm not sure, you might have heard of the thing about so it ends here, and this is true to life too. In real life, there is actually also kind of this chunk that exists underwater. If you didn't know, that's part of the Great Wall in China. There is a part of it that's underwater because the rising sea levels, some part of it is actually now being a bit flooded by water. One thing you might have heard, Yilin, is, I'm not sure if you have heard, but the Great Wall of China, this is a saying that people say, is that the Great Wall of China is so big that you can see it from space and from the moon. Do you think that is true or no?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's what most people think, but actually it is false. It is not possible to see the Great Wall of China from the moon or from outer space. The reason why is that, as you can see, the Great Wall of China is very long, right? So if it's so long, why can't we see it in space? Well, it's because of how wide it is. It is too skinny to be seen in space. There is not enough width to see in space. So the analogy or an example of it is, seeing the Great Wall from space is trying to find a strand of hair from space. So basically all you see from space is this little tiny strand of hair. So it is long enough, but it's not wide enough to be seen. That's why you really can't see the Great Wall of China from space.
Oh.
All right, interesting, right?
Where is Forbidden City?
Sorry?
Where is Forbidden City?
Okay, so Forbidden City is a different map. I might not have it at the moment, and I want to show it to everybody next week, because the Forbidden City will be part of next week's curriculum and not this week's Great Wall. So that will be next week, right? I believe that should just be version of Tower Bridge. No. Oh, I guess it's not here. Sorry. All right. All right. So this is the Forbidden City. I can give you a quick sneak peek. All right. It might not work because it's been a while since I opened this map up, but this is the Forbidden City. It's a 1-to-1. It's a 1-to-1 scale. So it's the exact same as you'll see in real life, the size of it. Of course, you see some parts of it. There will be a tour that we can do. And yeah, so I'll be hopping on next week. I'll be hopping on a train track that will take us all the way through the Forbidden City. All right.
Okay.
Great. Okay. All right, then. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed looking at this Minecraft, and thank you for staying behind. And I'll see you next week then. All right. Thank you for coming.
Bye.
All right. Bye.